Our Jim Armstrong has the exclusive interview. Jim?
Paula, I've spoken with several of those jurors off camera. They all seem very confident in the decisions they've made, but many have concerns about their personal safety, including the man you're about to hear from, which is why we're hiding his identity. These are 18 men and women plucked from their daily lives and asked to see, hear, and evaluate some of the most gruesome and intense testimony you could possibly imagine. It has taken a toll. And now one of those jurors, one of the men who deliberated and found Juror Tsarnaev guilty on all counts and then sentenced him to die, is ready to talk.
Personally, I feel justice was indeed served.
Day one, defense attorney Judy Clark gets up and says it was him. What goes through your mind?
It's quite honest of them. And
it leaves you of some of your duty, right? At that point on, do you say, okay, it was him, let's just skip? Or how do you hear
well,
that?
Of course, in them saying that it was him, yes. But of course, the question is, how much of it was him? I really didn't know just how much was him or, his brother.
Their defense that it was really Tamerlan, the older brother, the mastermind that led him around. What did you make of that defense?
Yes. In my estimation, again, I personally thought that, yes, he did definitely have a hand in the end result of Juror's behavior, absolutely.
But that's not enough to...
No, because even though, for me, that did weigh on my mind, still doesn't take away from the reality of what Juror did.
We will hear a lot more from that juror coming up at 5:30 and 6 o'clock tonight, including his particular take on the justice system and the feasibility of the death penalty as a punishment. Paula?
Jim Armstrong is here tonight with this WBZ exclusive. Jim?
Paula, over the past few months, I've spoken off camera with several Tsarnaev jurors. They tell me overwhelming doesn't even begin to explain what it was like to serve on that jury. However, they all seem confident in their decisions, including this man.
I try to be deliberate but true, always true. So I think I accomplished that. I know I accomplished that.
Juror Tsarnaev's federal trial ended almost 3 months ago. Since then, every single juror, all 18, have maintained total and complete silence until now. What's taken so long for you or for any juror to finally talk?
It took a couple months to do that. Nothing about this trial was easy.
Like his fellow jurors, this man is still worried about his safety. That's why we're hiding his identity. While he stands by his verdict and the punishment, he is well aware he sentenced a terrorist to die.
There is no getting away from that. That was an issue that had to be addressed. And for me personally, it was extremely hard to approach that subject. It still is.
But you feel like the death sentence was the correct punishment?
Yes, I do still feel that we gave the appropriate punishment.
These jurors, 12 deliberators and 6 alternates, were plucked out of their daily lives and asked to see and hear and evaluate some of the most gruesome testimony you could imagine. It's all taken a toll. Would you do it again?
If it was my choice and I had a say in it, no, I wouldn't.
You'll hear much more tonight at 11 from that juror, including the reason why that juror has chosen today to speak. David?
And Jim, what was it like for you to actually speak with the juror? I mean, you spent months in that courtroom. You were there for jury selection. You almost created a profile of who each juror was. You felt like you knew them. To actually now sit down and speak with one of them.
It's strange, I think, is the best way to explain it. I mean, I've met several of them in person, and it is weird. I do know so much about them. I have these profiles. They know a little bit about me. Yeah. It's funny and a bit awkward, too. They recognized me in court as the guy with the good posture. So I guess that's something good to be known for, but they remember me having my pen behind my ear and sitting up straight. I stuck out in their minds, and I guess that's what's important. They felt comfortable coming to us and telling their story.
I was going to say hats off to you because they felt comfortable talking to you. So great job, and we look forward to seeing your story tonight at 11 o'clock. Paula, over to you.
A WBZ exclusive.
Nothing about this trial was easy. I just handled it by taking it one step at a time. Personally, I feel justice was indeed served.
One of the jurors who sentenced Juror Tsarnaev to death is breaking his silence. And there's a reason he wanted to share his story and share it today.
Our Jim Armstrong is here. And Jim, he says this trial changed him and his life forever.
David, he also described the marathon bombing to me as an event that rippled out far and wide. Those ripples ended up reaching 18 people who had no idea what was coming. They were called to serve on a jury that would forever change their lives. He has asked us to conceal his identity tonight, but for this juror, it's time to explain what that felt like.
that we did what we had to, did to the best of our ability. I believe that we made the right choice.
When the jury summons arrived last year, he knew little about the marathon bombings. But now, Juror 83 knows more than he'd like.
You were just all sort of plucked out of your normal lives and had all this thrown at you. So how do you handle all that?
I just handled it by taking it one step at a time.
Day one, defense attorney Judy Clark gets up and says it was him. What goes through your mind?
It's quite honest of them.
And it leaves you of some of your duty, right? At that point on, do you say, okay, it was him, let's just...
Yes, but of course the question is, how much of it was him?
Johar Tsarnaev's lawyers had tried to convince the jury that the bomber's bully of a brother turned him into a killer.
I personally thought that, yes, he did definitely have a hand in the end result of Johar's behavior.
But that's not enough to...
No, because even though for me that did weigh on my mind, still doesn't take away from the reality of what Johar did.
Deciding Tsarnaev was guilty was one thing. The real struggle, his punishment.
It made it hard for me to jump directly on board as to what the appropriate punishment would be.
So I think I hear you saying that it took you a while to come to the decision to sentence him to death.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no quick or easy way, I think, to come to that.
Are you confident that sentencing him to death was the right thing to do?
Yes.
Why?
Because in the end, he's still, and it's hard for me to talk about, but people died and were severely maimed because of his actions. And as good of a person as he may have been up until that point, and as much potential as a person he may have had, he still chose to do what he did.
Juror 83, the first to speak and the first to write a book, coming out next month, written with a family friend.
If I were to assess, I would say he walked in a 22-year-old and probably walked out a 30-year-old in terms of emotional maturity.
There was no escaping such a heavy and really everlasting decision, probably the hardest decision that I've had to make.
If you had the ability to choose whether or not to be a Tsarnaev juror, would you do it again?
If it was my choice and I had a say in it, no, I wouldn't.
Juror 83 does expect people to be critical of his decision to write his book, but he told me for him it was helpful to write everything down, to tell the story from his perspective. He says it allowed him to process some of what he saw and heard this year. Jim Armstrong, WBZ News.
In this case, if the parties cannot reach a deal. Our own Jim Armstrong is live in New York with a preview. Jim.
Katie, there is a chance tomorrow could be the day this all comes to an end, albeit a very slim chance. The judge has more than suggested he wants both sides to reach a resolution between themselves, but he also says he will do it if they can't, something he might do from the bench in just a few hours. Tom Brady was able to skip his second hearing in federal court, as was NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. But both men will be here on Monday, likely for the final time. Judge Richard Berman will do what he's been doing, meet with both sides individually in private, and then later question them in open court. Brady and Goodell will probably sit silently as their attorneys argue. Working feverishly next to them, though, courtroom sketch artist Jane Rosenberg. It does you no good to go in tomorrow and be all frazzled.
It does me no good. I'm not saying I won't. I've had sleepless nights, and Tom Brady's been in my mind. In the middle of the night, I get up worrying about it.
Rosenberg took a beating on social media last time she drew Brady and Goodell in court.
I don't like knowing people are really watching what I'm doing. I guess people do all the time, but I never think about it ever. But now I feel like everybody's commenting and they're really watching.
She since apologized for not making number 12 look handsome, and she says she's up for another shot. She's even done this practice sketch to prove to herself and to everybody else what she's capable of.
This would kind of be unlike any other day you've ever had.
Absolutely, and I can't wait for it to be over. Tomorrow night I'm going to celebrate. I don't know what, but just maybe I'll have a good night's sleep.
Rosenberg called that her redemption sketch, and though she's justifiably proud of it, she also told me there's no way she's getting a good night's sleep tonight, so anxious about what's going to happen in court on her end tomorrow morning. Reasonable to assume Tom Brady and Roger Goodell feeling the same kinds of emotions, because what could happen in that courtroom tomorrow at this point is anybody's guess. Live in New York City, Jim Armstrong, WBZ News. Katie?
All right, thanks so much, Jim.
Warlocks and just about everything else are taking over Salem.
I have to stand next to this guy. Tonight, WBZ's Jim Armstrong is in the thick of all things spooky.
And this is actually just the pre-party on Halloween night itself. An estimated 80 to 100,000 people are expected to come to Salem, a true test of the city's resources. First time in Salem?
Yeah, first time up here.
Currently being chased by some sort of law enforcement, I assume?
No.
Help me, please, help me!
It's Salem's signature event. And this year, the stars have aligned to break records.
Halloween on a Saturday with good weather. It's going to be record numbers. They're going to come in early, and we're encouraging people to come in early, take public transportation.
Some costumes are certain to raise eyebrows on the commuter rail, but nothing will be as terrifying as trying to park here tomorrow. And take note, if someone's police costume looks legit, it might be.
Besides the uniform presence, we have a large undercover presence, people working in the crowd, trying to prevent any problems from happening before they do.
City planners have advice.
Coming with some patience because there's going to be large crowds here with a really positive attitude.
Because after all, this is meant to be a family event. Big roar for me, big roar. You're a good lion. But you'll still see the scary.
I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it.
And the strange.
Can I ask what? Come see us tomorrow night. This is nothing compared to tomorrow.
No,
night.
this is something.
No.
In the interest of total fairness, can you give me your best witch's cackle? That's kind of scary too. I mean, her roar was scarier, but the cackle did great. Wow.
I love being a witch. Salem's so much fun.
One thing police won't tolerate, realistic weapons with your costume. So swords, knives, guns, if police see them, they'll confiscate them and keep them until Sunday. In Salem, Jim Armstrong, WBZ News.